My sister and I went on a kayak last year, and we came down to the water's edge, and there were 3 panty liners. It was disgusting.
My dad is deaf in one ear because of swimming in raw sewage when he was a kid.
It's very obvious that there's a lot of pollution in the sea, and it's not just in Brighton and Hove. It's around the nation. It affects our rivers. It affects our lakes, and it has to end.
Rubbish, crap, shit. These are all ways to describe the UK's approach to waterways, and also what's in them. Water companies are discharging raw sewage into our waters at record rates. In 2023, water companies dumped sewage into the UK's rivers and seas for a total of 3.6 million hours. It's a national scandal, and water companies are pocketing £1 billion in profits each year with little consequence. And people are furious. That's why at waterways all over the country, surfers, kayakers and other water enjoyers have turned out to protest. And I'm here on Brighton Beach to meet them. What are we doing here today?
Today we're here with hundreds of protesters to call for an end to sewage pollution into waterways by 2030.
Can you talk us through your outfit?
Well, my outfit is what I wear to go swimming and surfing and paddleboarding in the winter. In summer, I just wear a bikini. But unfortunately, having panty liners and loo roll and poo all over me is actually part of the costume when you live down here.
Unfortunately, it means that we're seeing people are getting sick when they enter the water to go for a swim or a surf or a paddle. We're also seeing mass die-offs of fish. It's hugely impacting the ecology of rivers and the sea, places like Brighton Beach today.
My sister and I went on a kayak last year, and we came down to the water's edge, and there were 3 panty liners. It was disgusting. And then there's always poo everywhere.
It must put you off, surely.
Well, it does, but when you go past the sewage, it's sort of okay. Yeah, of course it puts us off, but we live by the sea, and we've all chosen to live by the sea because we want to go swimming or paddleboarding or whatever. And it's really a big part of Brighton. And when you can't actually go in and do what you want to do, it's sad.
Why do you think the water companies are allowed to get away with this?
Frankly, the regulators are doing a terrible job. Over the past 30 years, the water companies have been allowed to get away with polluting, and that means they've been allowed to take more profits and pay out more dividends to their shareholders. And so they've just been getting away with it, and it means that they can get more money in their pockets and less money in the infrastructure that we need to actually tackle the problem.
So, how did we get to this point? In 1989, the Thatcher government sold off Britain's water to private investors. Since then, the water companies have paid out £72 billion to shareholders, and the quality of water has absolutely plummeted. Water companies are allowed to dump sewage into rivers and seas when there's been particularly heavy rainfall using storm overflows. This winter was really rainy, which is why industry leaders say that so much sewage was dumped. They're only supposed to do so in exceptional circumstances, but as climate change brings heavier rainfalls, it's clear that our water systems are woefully inadequate. What message would you send to the water companies?
Well, cease and desist, find another way. That obviously Victorian sewers, there's a lot of people that live here. Stop dumping shit in our oceans. Find another way to do it, and also stop charging us exorbitant prices for southern water. It's disgusting. It's really bad. And obviously the government's got a lot to do with that, and the local council, so that it needs to stop. And also, I would say, even when there is loads of poo that's dumped in here, there are no signs up to alert all the day trippers who come down, like yourself, if you're going to get in your little G-string.
The protest was heading onto the water, and unfortunately, I had left my G-string at home. So a wetsuit and a cheap boogie board would have to do. Harry, can it be torso up? No peen. What are we doing here today?
I am supporting Surfers Against Sewage because I'm passionate about protecting our seas, for us to swim in, for our children to enjoy, and everyone to have the best fun. But I'm also very aware that there is a hidden dirtier story affected, and it is affecting our seas and our wildlife and the huge biodiversity within the sea as well. And we have to do everything we can to protect it for our future generation. And so if I can support in any way, I will be. Yeah.
As the pollution, is that something you witnessed yourself? The pollution or sewage in the water?
Yeah, Surface Against Sewage do an amazing job. They've got an app which you can look at, but it is very obvious that there's a lot of pollution in the sea. And it's not just in Brighton and Hove, it's around the nation. It affects our rivers, it affects our lakes. And it has to end.
It seems this week we've had they've been dumping into Lake Windermere, the parasite in the water in Devon.
Yeah.
It's farcical at this point, isn't it?
Yeah, there's so many stories about it all over the country, and I see it daily on the news. It's crazy.
It's been going on for years and years. My dad is deaf in one ear because of swimming in raw sewage when he was a kid. Yeah, and so that was he's 65 now. And, it's still the same problem today. It's ridiculous. Yeah.
I was speaking to someone earlier and they were like, oh, when you go past the sewage, the water's really nice. But that just sounds ludicrous. You shouldn't have to go past tampons, used condoms, etc.
Oh, absolutely not. And we have to remember that the sea is a shared space. It's not just for us to enjoy, it's for that huge array of wildlife that's in it. And we're harming and damaging their environment as well, and we need to be very aware of that. So it's about the protection for us to enjoy it, but then also the protection for the whole planet as well.
This year is a really critical year for change on this issue. We've got a general election coming up by the end of this year, and so politicians are keener than ever to hear about what the public want to say and what their priorities are. So we really tell the communities and the supporters that we work with to make sure that when people do come and ask for their opinion and ask for their vote, that they make sure that they tell those politicians or would-be politicians what their priorities are and demand commitments for action in the future. But the other thing that's happening this year, which is why it's such a critical year, is that we have the water companies in England and Wales setting out their 5-year plans. That's going to take us all the way to 2030. So if we want to see an end to sewage pollution in the places that we swim and surf and splash, then we need the water regulator, Ofwat, to hold those water companies to account when they're assessing those business plans.
How did today go?
It was amazing. We had hundreds of people who care about the water coming out, getting in the water and saying enough is enough to the water companies. We want you to clean up our rivers and seas. It was a brilliant movement, and it was great to hear the voices of hundreds of people from both here in Brighton, but also seeing people from across the UK coming out and asking for better from water companies.
Are you hopeful?
I feel really hopeful. This year is an amazing year. We've heard from the public all across the UK demanding action. We know that the government and all the water companies are actually feeling really under pressure at the moment to do something. And we know a general election's coming up. We're hearing from people across the UK that they want more for their rivers and seas. And I do think that we might get something in the build-up to the general election.